Hey, stop! The shout tore through the grove. Then the lights hit. Floodlights snapped on across the yard, spilling into the trees, turning the rows of orange groves into sharp lines of shadow and glare. Move! I barked. We ran. Branches snapped against my arms as we cut between the rows, boots pounding dirt, the smell of citrus thick in the air. There! In the trees! Flashlights bounced behind us. Too close. Jason was right beside me, clutching the folder like it mattered more than breathing. James was already ahead, angling toward the fence. Carl cut right, fast, deliberate. This way! I followed. Engines roared to life behind us. Headlights flared. A beam swept past my shoulder, close enough to burn. No cover, just distance. The fence came out of the dark. James went over first, then Jason. Carl didn't slow. I grabbed the wire, hauled myself up. There! I dropped hard on the other side and ran. We didn't stop until the lights were gone, until the grove was just darkness again. I turned back, catching my breath. They were still searching, still looking. And that's when it hit me. We hadn't just found something out there. We'd been seen finding it. Most cases don't start in the dark. They start in offices, phone calls, quiet conversations where people pretend they're not already in trouble. This one didn't. This one started in an orange grove 30 miles outside Neon City, with 4 men sitting in the dark, watching something that didn't belong there. The road in had been easy to miss, just a narrow turnoff off a county highway marked by a faded sign and a stretch of dirt that looked like it hadn't been maintained in years. The kind of place you'd drive past 100 times without thinking twice. That's what made it perfect. I leaned against the Countach, arms folded, eyes fixed on the grove ahead. Rows of orange trees stretched out in tight, uniform lines, disappearing into the dark. Somewhere in the middle of it all sat a small packing facility, low roof, metal siding, just enough structure to pass as legitimate. No lights, no movement. At least, not at first. "You sure this is it?" James asked, flicking ash into the dirt beside his boot. I didn't look at him. "Jason?" Jason was crouched near the front of his Audi, a small portable scanner balanced on the hood. The faint glow from the display lit his face in pale green. "Plates match the shipment logs," he said. "At least the ones that aren't fake." "That many?" James muttered. Jason glanced up. "Enough." Carl stood a few feet off to the side, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on the grove. He hadn't said much since we got there. That wasn't like him. Places like this, quiet, out of the way, running operations they didn't want seen, this was his territory. Normally, he'd already be telling us who owned it, who ran it, who to avoid. Tonight, he was just watching. That told me more than anything Jason's scanner could. I pushed off the car, stepping forward just enough to get a clearer view past the first line of trees. "Nothing moves produce this late," I said. "Not like this." James snorted. "Maybe they're just behind schedule." "Yeah," I said. "Every night." That was the thing. This wasn't a one-off. Jason had pulled 3 nights of movement through here. Same pattern, same timing. Trucks in, trucks out, always late, always quiet. Too clean to be sloppy, too hidden to be honest. A low hum broke the silence. Headlights appeared in the distance, crusting the dirt road before cutting sharply off. The truck kept moving. No lights, no hesitation. Just rolling straight toward the gate like it had done it 100 times before. "Here we go," James muttered. We watched as the truck approached the chain link entrance. For a second, it looked like it might stop. It didn't. The gate opened from the inside. No delay, no check. Whoever was running the place already knew it was coming. The truck rolled through, disappearing into the grove. A few seconds later, lights flickered on near the packing structure. Low, controlled, just enough to work by. Shapes moved around it. Men, from the look of it. Fast, efficient, no wasted motion. "No way that's fruit," James said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." Another truck appeared 10 minutes later. Different cab, different color, same routine. Lights off, gate open, in and gone. Jason tapped the side of the scanner, frowning. "These registrations don't line up," he said. "One's tied to a produce distributor that shut down last year. The other doesn't exist." "Ghost companies," Carl said quietly. It was the first thing he'd said since we got there. I glanced over at him. He hadn't taken his eyes off the grove. "That what this feels like to you?" I asked. Carl didn't answer right away. A third truck rolled out from deeper inside the grove, engine low, suspension dipping slightly as it hit the uneven dirt near the gate. Heavy. Too heavy. Even at a distance, you could see it riding low. Something shifted inside the trailer as it hit a rut. Not loose. Not light. Whatever they were moving, it wasn't stacked crates of oranges. The truck slowed just enough near the gate for the driver to lean out, exchanging a quick word with someone just inside the fence. For a moment, the overhead light caught his face. Carl went still. It wasn't obvious at first. No sharp reaction, no sudden movement, just stillness. Then he exhaled once, slow. "I know him." James straightened. "You sure?" Carl nodded slightly, eyes still locked on the truck as it rolled out onto the dirt road and disappeared into the dark. "Name's Ruiz," he said. "Driver, runner, does pickups, drop-offs." "For who?" I asked. Carl finally looked at me. There was something different in his expression now. Not surprise, recognition, and something underneath it, something heavier. "He runs with Alvarez." The name settled into the space between us. Jason glanced up from the scanner. James let out a low breath. I turned back toward the grove, watching the gate close behind the truck like nothing had happened. Rows of orange trees, quiet night air. A business that looked like it belonged there. It didn't. Not anymore. "Alvarez doesn't move produce," I said. Carl shook his head. "No," he replied. "He moves things people don't ask about." I watched the dark stretch of road where the truck had vanished, the shape of the operation starting to take form in my head. This wasn't a farm. It was a stop, a transfer point sitting just far enough outside the city to stay off the radar and just close enough to keep things moving. I'd seen setups like that before. They were never small, and they were never clean. I took one last look at the grove, at the faint movement still happening behind the trees. Then I made the call. "We follow the next one," I said. Jason nodded immediately. James didn't argue this time. Carl just kept watching the gate, waiting. Places like that don't end up in the middle of a case by accident. Not unless someone wants them overlooked. The truck's taillights disappeared into the dark, swallowed by the same road it had come from. For a moment, none of us spoke. We just stood there, watching the empty stretch of dirt like it might give something back if we waited long enough. It didn't. "Alvarez," James said finally, like he was testing the name out loud. "That the same guy I'm thinking of?" Carl didn't answer right away. He reached into his coat, pulled out a cigarette, and lit it with slow, practiced movements. The flame flickered briefly against his face before disappearing into the night. "Yeah," he said. "Same one." "That's not small time," James muttered. "No," Carl said. "It isn't." I kept my eyes on the grove. "Start talking." Carl took a drag, exhaled, then shifted his weight slightly as he looked back toward the trees. Alvarez doesn't run crews the way most guys do, he said. He runs layers. Drivers like Ruiz, they don't know what they're moving. They pick up, they drop off, they get paid. No questions. Compartmentalized, Jason said, still crouched by the Audi, fingers moving across the scanner. Carl nodded. Exactly. James shook his head. So what, we're looking at drugs, weapons? Carl glanced at him. If it was that simple, it wouldn't be happening out here. That tracked. Operations like this didn't pick remote farmland for convenience. They picked it because it didn't attract attention, because it looked like nothing, because no one thought to look twice. Jason tapped the side of the scanner again, then stood, turning the screen slightly so we could see it. I've got 3 different company names tied to those plates, he said. All of them either dissolved or inactive. One shut down last year, one 2 years ago. One doesn't exist in any registry I can access. Paper ghosts, Carl said. More like paper shields, Jason replied. If anyone checks, they hit a dead end. I nodded slowly, piecing it together. Grove's not the destination, I said. James looked over. Then what is it? A handoff point. They all looked back toward the trees. I could see it now. The pattern, the timing, the way the trucks moved in and out without delay. Nothing stayed here. Everything passed through. Carl flicked ash into the dirt. He's keeping the footprint small, he said. No inventory sitting in one place too long. Harder to track, harder to hit. Means there's another location, Jason added. Wherever those trucks are actually headed. Yeah, I said. And that's where the answers are. James let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. Or where the problems are. I glanced at him. You thinking of walking away? He shook his head once. No, he said. Just making sure we know what we're walking into. Fair. That was the difference between staying alive and ending up a cautionary story. A low rumble in the distance pulled our attention back to the road. Another truck. Headlights this time, but dimmed. It slowed as it approached the turnoff, then cut its lights just before the dirt road, rolling the rest of the way in under moonlight. Same move, same confidence. They don't even hesitate, Jason said quietly. They don't expect anyone to be watching, I replied. The truck reached the gate, opened without question. Gone again. I watched the glow of the facility lights flicker faintly through the trees as movement picked up inside. Timing's tight, Jason said, checking his watch. In, transfer, out. They're keeping everything moving fast. Carl nodded. Less time on site means less risk. And less chance of anyone figuring out what they're moving, James added. Exactly. I looked back down the road where the last truck had disappeared, then over at the others. We're not getting what we need from here, I said. Jason straightened. You're thinking tail. I'm thinking we pick one and follow it, I replied, carefully. James gave a small, humorless smile. Carefully, right. Carl crushed the cigarette under his heel. If we do this, he said, we don't get sloppy. Alvarez's people don't scare easy, but they notice patterns. We won't give them one, I said. Jason reached into the Audi and grabbed a small notepad, already jotting down plate numbers, timing intervals, anything he could use once we were moving. I can track route changes, he said. If they try to shake us, I'll see it. James nodded toward the road. I'll hang back, give you space. Carl looked between all of us, then back toward the grove. For what it's worth, he said, if Ruiz is here, this isn't just a local run. Alvarez doesn't waste good drivers on small jobs. Good, I said. They all looked at me. I'm not interested in small jobs. Another engine turned over inside the grove. Moments later, a truck emerged from between the trees, rolling toward the gate. Loaded, heavy again. The gate opened. The truck eased out onto the dirt road, turning toward the highway. I pushed off the Countach, heading for the driver's side. "That's ours," I said. Jason was already moving. James headed for his Porsche. Carl took one last look at the grove before turning away. We didn't rush, didn't make noise, just slipped back into our cars and waited for the right distance. The truck's taillights flickered faintly ahead as it reached the main road. I started the engine, low, controlled. Places like that aren't built to hold answers. They're built to move them. If we wanted to know what was really going on out there, we had to follow the ones carrying it. The truck hit the highway without slowing. No hesitation, no signal, just a smooth merge into the dark like it belonged there. I gave it distance before pulling out, letting a pair of late-night commuters slide between us. Headlights washed across the Countach's dash as I eased in behind them, keeping the truck just visible ahead, 2 faint red dots cutting through the night. Jason leaned forward in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the road. "Speed steady," he said. "No sudden changes." "Good," I replied. "Means they're not expecting company." "Yet." In the rear view, I caught a glimpse of James's Porsche falling in behind us, farther back. He kept his spacing clean, close enough to stay in it, far enough not to be part of it. Carl's voice crackled over the radio, low and controlled. "Stay off him too tight," he said. "Alvarez drivers check mirrors more than most." "I see him," I said. "We're fine." The truck stayed in the right lane for a few miles, then drifted off onto an exit that didn't lead anywhere important. No signage worth noting, just a worn ramp that curved down into a darker stretch of road. Jason glanced over. "That's not a main route. Doesn't need to be," I said, easing off the accelerator just enough to widen the gap. "It's the right one." We followed at a distance. The road narrowed as it cut away from the highway, streetlights thinning out until they disappeared completely. The city glow faded behind us, replaced by long stretches of shadow and the occasional flicker of industrial lighting in the distance. "Industrial edge," Jason said, checking his notes. "Old zoning, warehouses, storage lots, some of it abandoned." "Some of it not," Carl added over the radio. The truck rolled on, steady and deliberate. No sudden turns, no panic, just a route it knew well. It passed 2 empty lots, a rusted chain-link fence, then slowed as it approached a low, wide building set back from the road. No sign out front, just a single overhead light above a sliding metal door. Cold storage, maybe, or something pretending to be. "There," Jason said quietly. I saw it. The truck signaled, first time it had done that all night, and turned in. The gate was already open, again. No delay, no check. It rolled inside and disappeared behind the building. I drove past, didn't slow, didn't look, just enough of a glance to take it in. James's headlights passed a few seconds later, then disappeared ahead. "Circle it," I said into the radio. "Find somewhere dark." "Got a spot," James replied. "Backside, about 100 yards. I kept going another block before turning off onto a side road, looping around through a stretch of broken pavement and overgrown lots until the building came back into view from the opposite side. We killed the lights before we got too close. The 3 cars settled into the dark, engines idling low. From here, we had a partial view of the rear of the building. The truck was backed up to a loading bay. Men moved around it, quick, efficient, same as the Grove. No uniforms. No wasted motion. "Same crew?" James asked. Carl leaned slightly forward, narrowing his eyes. "Same kind," he said. "Different faces." The rear doors of the trailer swung open. For a moment, nothing. Then 2 men stepped inside. A third stood outside, watching the perimeter. Jason shifted slightly, trying to get a better angle. "Can you see what they're moving?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. One of the men reappeared at the edge of the trailer, grabbing something from inside. Not a crate, too small for that, too controlled. He passed it down carefully to the man below. Rectangular, sealed, no markings I could make out from this distance. Another followed, same size, same handling. "Not produce," James said under his breath. "No," I agreed. "Not drugs either," Carl added. "They don't treat product like that unless it's worth more than the weight." Jason frowned. "Then what is it?" I watched the way they moved the containers. No drops, no stacking, no rough handling. Whatever was inside, it mattered, and it wasn't supposed to break. "They're not just moving it," I said. "They're protecting it." A second vehicle rolled into the yard. Not a truck this time, a sedan. Dark, unmarked. It slowed near the loading bay, headlights cutting across the building before shutting off. "New arrival," Jason said. Carl leaned in closer, eyes narrowing. "That's oversight," he said quietly. "Someone making sure the handoff goes clean." The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Couldn't see his face from here, but the way the others shifted, subtle, almost automatic, told me enough. He wasn't just another worker. He was someone they answered to. The transfer sped up. More containers, same careful handling. The sedan idled nearby like it didn't plan on staying long. "Time window's tight," Jason said. "They want this done fast." "Then we don't have much time either," I replied. A flashlight beam suddenly swept across the far side of the yard. Not near us, not yet, but close enough to remind us how thin the margin was. "Perimeter check," James muttered. Carl didn't take his eyes off the scene. "They're not sloppy," he said. "We stay too long, we get noticed." He wasn't wrong. The last container was moved inside the building. The truck doors shut. The sedan driver spoke briefly to one of the men, short, direct, then got back in. Moments later, the sedan rolled out, heading the opposite direction from the way we came. The truck pulled away from the loading bay, empty now, or lighter. 2 points, Jason said quietly. "Grove to here, and then out again." "Pipeline," I said. Carl nodded once. "And we're only seeing a piece of it." I watched the building for another second, committing every detail I could. Entry points, lighting, movement, patterns. We had enough to know what this was. Not enough to know who it was for. "Next steps inside," I said. Jason glanced at me. "You serious?" "That's where the answers are," I replied. James let out a slow breath. "And the trouble." Carl finally leaned back, eyes still on the building. "Same place, different night," he said. "They won't expect us to come back in." I nodded. "Good," I said. "Let's keep it that way." Following the truck told us how the operation moved. Going inside was the only way we were going to find out why. We went back the next night. Same road, same turnoff. Same stretch of dirt that looked like it led nowhere. This time, we didn't bring the whole convoy. Just the Countach and James's 944. 2 cars were easier to hide, easier to move, easier to get out if things went sideways. We killed the headlights early and coasted the last 100 yards, letting the grove swallow us again. The air felt the same, cool, still, heavy with that sharp citrus scent. Only now, we knew what was really moving through it. Jason checked his watch. "Timing lines up with last night," he said. "We've got a window before the next inbound." "Good," I said. "We use it." Carl stood near the edge of the trees, studying the layout like he'd already walked it a dozen times in his head. "They'll have eyes on the gate and the main structure," he said. "Backsides where they get lazy. Too many trees, too much ground to cover." James cracked his knuckles. "That's our way in, then." I nodded. "Quick and quiet," I said. "We're not here to stay." We moved in on foot, slipping between the rows of trees, keeping low and off the main paths. The grove felt tighter up close, branches brushing shoulders, leaves whispering with every step. The packing facility came into view through the trees. Low building, metal siding, same as before. Lights on this time, but controlled, focused inward. Work lights. Jason crouched near a small utility box mounted to the side of the structure, pulling a compact tool from his jacket. "Give me a second," he said. James leaned against the wall, listening. Carl scanned the perimeter. I watched the door. A quiet click. Jason looked up. "Alarm loops, simple," he said. "They didn't expect anyone to bother." "They expected right," James muttered. We slipped inside. The air changed immediately. Cooler. Still. The faint hum of refrigeration units somewhere deeper in the building. Crates were stacked near the entrance. Actual produce from the look of it. Enough to sell the illusion if anyone ever walked in during the day. But that wasn't where the real work was. Carl moved past them without a glance. "Back here," he said. We followed him through a narrow corridor that opened into a larger space behind the main floor. Different setup. No produce, just pallets, metal shelving, and a reinforced loading area that didn't belong in a simple farm operation. "This is it," Jason said quietly. I nodded. "Find something we can take." Jason moved to a nearby desk, papers, ledgers, shipping manifests. He flipped through them quickly, eyes scanning faster than his hands. James checked the loading area, running a hand along one of the sealed containers stacked against the wall. "These match the ones from the warehouse," he said. Carl crouched near a crate, studying markings that had been half scratched off. "They're masking everything," he said. "Roots, contents, origins." Jason pulled a small stack of papers free, tucking them into a folder. "Got something," he said. "Codes, dates, transfer points." "Enough?" I asked. "For now." That's when the lights shifted. Subtle, just enough to notice. Carl's head came up immediately. "Hold up." We froze. A second later, a door slammed somewhere near the front of the building. Voices. Not close, but not far either. "They weren't supposed to be back yet," Jason whispered. "They weren't," Carl said, "which means something changed." Footsteps, moving through the front area. Closer. I looked at the others. "We're done," I said quietly. "Let's go." We moved fast but controlled, retracing our steps toward the side exit. Then, "Hey!" Too late. A flashlight beam cut through the doorway ahead, blinding and sharp. "There!" Everything snapped at once. "Move!" I barked. We hit the grove at a run. Branches whipped past as we cut between the rows, the ground uneven underfoot. Behind us, shouts echoed through the trees. "In the back! Go!" Flashlights burst into the grove, beams bouncing wildly as they gave chase. "They're splitting!" James shouted. "Let them!" I shot back. "Carl, lead!" Carl veered right immediately, cutting across the rows instead of following them. "This way!" We followed without hesitation. He moved like he knew exactly where the blind spots were, where the terrain dipped, where the trees thickened just enough to break line of sight. A beam swept past my shoulder, too close. Jason stumbled for half a step, clutching the folder tight. "Keep moving," I said. "I got it." The fence came into view ahead. Not the main gate, smaller section, partially obscured by overgrowth. "Here," Carl called. James didn't slow. He hit the fence, climbed, and dropped over in one motion. Jason went next, slower, but he made it. Carl was already over. I turned just as a flashlight locked onto me. "There!" Footsteps pounding behind me, close. I grabbed the wire, hauled myself up, swung over, and dropped hard on the other side. "Go!" James snapped. We ran for the cars. The Countach and the 944 sat where we'd left them, dark and waiting. Doors opened. Engines turned over, low at first, then rising. Headlights flared behind the fence line as one of their trucks roared to life. "They're coming," Jason said. "Not fast enough," I replied. I pulled the Countach onto the dirt road. James right behind me in the 944. Tires kicked up dust as we accelerated, the Grove shrinking in the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights burst onto the road behind us. Pursuit. "Got company," James said over the radio. "I see them." The road curved hard to the left ahead. I took it without braking. The Countach hugged the turn, engine screaming as we pushed onto the straightaway beyond. James stayed tight behind me. The pursuing truck hit the curve too fast. For a second, it looked like they might hold it. Then they fishtailed, losing just enough control to fall back. That was all we needed. I pushed harder, putting distance between us and the Grove, between us and whatever we'd just stepped into. The headlights behind us grew smaller, then disappeared. Silence settled back into the road. I eased off the accelerator, letting the engine drop. No one spoke for a few seconds, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the faint hum of the night around us. Finally, Jason exhaled. "They know," he said. "Yeah," I replied. I glanced once in the rear view. Nothing but empty road. "They do now." We didn't just watch the operation anymore. We walked through it. And that meant one thing. Next time, they'd be ready. The place didn't have a name worth remembering, just a flickering neon sign that said diner and a parking lot that had seen better decades. The kind of spot that stayed open all night because people like us needed somewhere to land when everything else was closed. I pulled the Countach in out front. James parked the 944 beside it. No one said much getting out. Adrenaline has a way of burning off fast once you're out of the dark and under bad fluorescent lighting. Inside it was quiet. A couple booths filled, a trucker near the counter, coffee going non-stop behind the register, the smell of grease and burnt toast hanging in the air. We took a booth in the back, vinyl seats, cracked table, coffee cups already waiting like they knew we were coming. The waitress didn't ask questions. "4 coffees," she said, already pouring. "Food?" "Eggs," James said. "Lots of them." "Same," I added. She nodded and disappeared. For a minute, it was just the sound of coffee hitting ceramic. Jason set the folder on the table like it weighed more than it should. He didn't open it right away, just rested his hand on it, staring down like he was still back in the Grove. Carl leaned back, one arm draped over the booth, eyes distant. James wrapped both hands around his cup. I took a sip. Hot. Bitter. Exactly what it needed to be. "All right," I said. "Let's hear it." Jason opened the folder. Papers slid across the table. Ledgers, coded entries, shipping logs. He tapped one with his finger. "These line up with what we saw," he said. "Grove, then warehouse. Same timing, same rotation." "Transfer points," I said. He nodded. "Yeah, but not just 2. There are more listed here, coded but consistent. This isn't a route." He looked up. "It's a network." James let out a low whistle. "All that running through an orange farm." "Exactly," Jason said. "It's clean, invisible. No one looks twice at produce shipments." Carl finally leaned forward. "That's the point," he said. "It's supposed to look like nothing." The waitress returned, setting down plates. Eggs, toast, hash browns. The smell cut through the tension just enough to remind us how long it had been since any of us had eaten. James didn't wait. Fork in, like the conversation could keep up or fall behind. I watched Carl. "You said Alvarez runs layers," I said. "Where does this put him?" Carl didn't answer right away. He picked up his coffee, took a slow sip, then set it down carefully. "Middle," he said. James looked up mid-bite. "Middle?" Carl nodded. "He's not the bottom, not the guy driving trucks, but he's not the top either." Jason frowned. "Then who's above him?" Carl gave a small shake of his head. "That's the part nobody sees." Silence settled over the table for a second. I glanced down at the papers again. Clean entries, tight schedules, no wasted movement. Whoever built this didn't cut corners. They built something that moved without being noticed. "That sedan," I said, "at the warehouse." Jason nodded. "Oversight." Carl looked at me. "That's who you worry about." James leaned back, chewing slowly. "So, what, this whole thing just keeps running? We take a look inside and that's it?" I met his gaze. "For now," I said. He didn't like that answer. Didn't blame him. Jason flipped another page. "There's more here," he said. "Dates coming up, future runs." Carl exhaled quietly. "Then they're not slowing down." "No," I said. "They're not." The waitress refilled our coffee without asking. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten just a little. Not sunrise yet, but close enough to feel it coming. The city, waking up, like nothing had happened. James wiped his hands on a napkin. "We got what we came for," he said. "We walked in, walked out." "Barely," Jason added. Carl looked toward the window, then back at the table. "They'll tighten things up now," he said. "New routes, new drivers, maybe even new locations." "Maybe," I said. I took another sip of coffee, letting the bitterness settle. "But not overnight." They all looked at me. "This kind of setup," I continued, "it takes time to build. You don't tear it down because 4 guys got a little too close." Jason nodded slowly. "Which means we can still track it." "Yeah," I said, "if we're careful." James leaned forward again. "And if we're not?" Carl answered that one. "Then next time," he said, "they won't be chasing you out of a grove." No one needed him to finish that thought. We all knew where it went. I looked down at the plates, the coffee, the worn table between us. 4 guys sitting in a diner at the edge of the city talking about something most people would never even know existed. That was the job. Find the thing hiding in plain sight. Decide how close you're willing to get. I leaned back slightly, eyes drifting toward the window as the first hint of morning crept in. Some cases end with answers. Nice, clean, tied up in a way that lets you sleep a little easier. I glanced at the folder sitting in the middle of the table. This wasn't one of those. Outside, a car passed. Normal, quiet, like the world hadn't shifted a few miles outside the city. We found the harvest, but whoever was planting it. I took one last sip of coffee. Was still out there. If you made it this far, you already know this case isn't over. The Grove was just the surface. The trucks, the routes, the handoffs, it all points to something bigger still moving through Neon City. So now, I want to hear from you. What do you think they were really transporting? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every one. And if you're riding along for the next case, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because whatever's behind this operation, we're not done with it yet.